consider in my clinical evaluation, what is required in the health technology assessment later on at national level in terms of cost effectiveness data. This needs to be considered from the start, first of all, because collecting this type of evidence is expensive. So do you have the investment, especially as a small company? Do you have the money to make that happen? And second is that actually it's much more efficient if you can collect that together already while developing the algorithm, when very likely you are, conducting study, when you are doing the development, instead of realizing afterwards that there could have been evidence and data you could have collected beforehand, but now you suddenly realize, no, I have to do another study with more hospitals to, for example, collect data on the cost of implementing the software in a hospital setting.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to add one point to what Annika mentioned about evidence gathering, because you have to, of course, gather evidence at the beginning, but once you deploy your solutions, it's not like you're selling something and then you say, hey, hands off. That system needs to go on running, and in different kinds of environments, like you were mentioning, Giorgio, right? Because the situation can also evolve over time, which means you need to continuously monitor. You have the responsibility to monitor if your solutions are delivering the expected quality that you would expect, not only at the day of deployment, but even later on, right? So I think it's important to also keep that in mind from not only your AI model performance point of view, but also from a regulatory point of view, to make sure that you have all the paperwork in place to make sure that you can also collect the data, you can also monitor it, and you can actually assess what the performance of your system is once it has been deployed. And I think we don't do enough of that now still. You are muted, I think.
Yes, this is an interesting monitoring, and I would love to reel it back to what Gregor mentioned in his presentation about the conceptual idea of what is intelligent, right? Like in intelligence, something would not make the same mistake twice, meaning that your AI system, once you deploy it, you can relearn. But that might have some implication on the way that it is legislated. Would you like to touch upon that aspect of AI, Annika? Like, you may have a version 1 that is built on a specific set of data, but once you're out there and you make a mistake, you would want to learn or retrain the model or something, right? Could you shed some light on that in terms of what we can expect in terms of how to deploy AI?
I mean, yeah. Sure. I mean, as Supriyo mentioned, you have already right now an obligation as a software developer to do post-market clinical follow-up. So you have to regularly check in with your software, with your users, to ensure that the software remains safe and performant. That can be done in different ways, via feedback forms integrated into the software, by yourself monitoring the performance if you have access to the device yourself. I think what we see in practice is different ways how to handle this issue. So first is what you can do is set actually performance parameters. So to say, okay, yes, the software learns, but it only learns within these certain parameters that, of course, you needed to establish beforehand, for example, via clinical studies. The second possibility is what manufacturers already do right now, is that you place the software on the market, is being used in clinical practice, but actually, and it does not learn, that software version does not change, but actually you have a virtual system running in parallel that has the same data, that has the same data, and that is learning. And then after, and that depends, a few months, maybe a year, you actually then evaluate that virtual version of the software and say, okay, is that safe and performing? And then you make the change in the software
check my, I don't know, whatever you have to check, blood pressure, take the drugs, etc. Now, the remaining 2%, 1 in 50 cases of interactions, there's a human touch. And this is the crucial part, this human touch. Why? Because you don't need to be with the patient all the time. So you record his reactions. So is he responding with, answers to the machine, to the chatbot? Okay. Is he providing measurements as was agreed with the doctor? But what you need in this 2% is a real person taking an overview, applying his, this innovativeness, human touch, whatever you call it, not AI at that moment. So you have to come back to the patient and provide service, human service, and says, dear Anne, you've been really good. Thank you for complying for the last 2 weeks. I'm checking what happened with you. And it says here that perhaps you were nervous 3 days ago, and what happened, tell me. And in human language, you have time to do that. So if you take that 2% away because you want to get profits or whatever, scale, I think you destroy what you actually created, which was really good. It was a nice blending of very low level AI, which is, patient adherence. And mind you, patient adherence in hypertension is extremely hard to achieve because hypertension is very non-problematic in terms of your current condition. It creates most of the problems in the healthcare system, by the way. So most deaths come from this blood stream and heart and whatever. Yeah. So and 50% of people have it.
Yeah.
Not that you don't have to treat everybody, but when you're treating them, the treatment has to be soft and it has to be constant. And does a chatbot, let's call it just a chatbot, it doesn't matter if it's AI. Does it help? Yes. Could it help without the human touch? I doubt it really very much. It wasn't a point for the researchers. It was rather a point for the application of a service to the patients.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because when you look at how AI is implemented, again, I'm referring to all kinds of publications. We might need to have a list of publications for the audience. But there was a nice publication recently in American Journal of Medical Informatics, I believe, or what is it called, JAMA, Journal of American Medical Informatics Association, where they had three strategies of implementing AI. One is the role model. So the AI does it and then you follow as it does. It's like kind of guiding you, like you would have your navigating system. You have the advisor, and that's where the chatbot comes in. The chatbot gives you some recommendation, like these recommendation engine. You can also implement it as a partner. So you work together with the AI and you help each other to enhance whatever skill or capability is required. Or you have the AI that you delegate a task to, which is slightly more difficult in healthcare. You could imagine these robotic process automation where you have AI automatically answering emails. That might not be something you want to do in healthcare, but still one of the possibilities. And depending on how you implement the AI, it would have a very big impact. And sometimes you may call it not AI that much because it doesn't fit the Hollywood definition of AI. But still, it's automation of certain tasks that helps the professionals to be more efficient. But very good point. Anya, you would want to add something to this? As a takeaway, the closing remark, what should I remember?
So first of all, seeing this as a European forum, I would like to point out from the data perspective that Europe is very diverse, both in terms of medical problems that happen, both in terms of, quality, genetics, ethnicities, cultures. So it's an ideal playground to develop and test AI solutions, because if you get it to work right across Europe, you're doing a really solid job. If you manage to capture that in your data, then you've done an excellent job. What I'd really like for everyone to not to forget is that the end goal and your end user is a patient. Even when you're doing it for the clinicians, you know, you're doing it for the benefit of the patient, and the social good aspect is really important. And if you make sure that you address that, be it a very specific topic on a very rare disease or a very general topic of just getting people to move more because then they'll be happier, healthier, you know, I don't know, have lower BMI, whatever. If you're doing it for the social good, then you will make a product which is sustainable and which is going to be used and people will adhere to it. And if you keep that in mind, then you're definitely set for success.
Excellent. I like that feedback very much. Okay, and circling around, let's go to Annika. Key takeaways, things to remember.
I think especially for those in the audience who come from the more mainstream IT and software development field and are thinking to enter healthcare, do not underestimate the legal regulatory assessment frameworks that you have to face if your software has clinical benefits and qualifies as a medical device. Certification, just as the e-marking, can take a year or even more. There are a lot of national requirements in terms of health technology assessment. And I think the cost associated also internally to set up your risk management processes, your quality management systems is considerable. And also your investors, for example, if you are a startup, need to be aware of that, and it needs to be costed into your business plan.
Excellent. Okay, and lastly, Supriyo.
Yeah, I would say data quality, because if you have poor quality data, then you're going to have systems which fail and where you simply cannot trust them. And just to give one last example, we even had situations where patients actually were generating some values simply because they knew that if they put in those sort of values, they wouldn't have to actually visit the doctor. So imagine that what that could do to any kind of predictive algorithms that we're developing, right? And can even put the patient at danger. So don't always trust the data that you get. I mean, data access is one thing, but after that, you have to make sure what you're dealing with can really be something you can depend on. So yeah, I would conclude with that.
Excellent. Very good. So I guess we're coming towards the end of this event. Realizing the potential of data and AI in healthcare. I think we've seen a lot of interesting perspective from the regulatory and the tech developers perspective, the ecosystem, the development perspective, and also the perspective of working with clinical partners inside an ecosystem. Great learnings about data, the value of data, the gift of having data to enable AI, but also the challenges around AI of turning that data into meaningful and actionable information inside an application that needs to be adopted. We also talked about the adoption of AI, like once you've created or while you're creating it, you should be thinking about alignment of all stakeholders and looking at the health. I really like that aspect. Not only the health evaluation in terms of clinical evaluation, but the economic side of things. Very big eye opener for me. So I would like to thank all the panelists. I would like to thank Gregor very much. It was a very interesting, exciting exchange with you. I would like to thank Supriyo, very insightful. I will also like to thank Anya, and especially for jumping in last minute, but having a great contribution to the discussion. And of course, I would like to thank Annika. Great eye opener. It was a huge space blind spot for me to look at those kind of perspectives that you brought to the table. So thank you all. I really enjoyed the discussions and the presentation, and I hope that the people in the audience have the same experiences I have. Thank you very much, and may there be any questions or remarks, please feel free to use these last few minutes to do it. And I will say goodbye for now.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have to stay on the stage and like behave like there is something going on at this time.
Yeah, like maybe someone from the audience who didn't get the opportunity to ask their question will come and give you a business card. You you remember the what do you say, that pre-COVID times? Yes.
The good old days.
The good old days. Yes.
No.
I don't know if technical support can come in and have some, maybe they have some feedback questions. Get the opportunity to ask their question.
No questions.
You remember the what do you say, the pre-COVID? Yes.
The good old days.
The good old days. Yes. I don't know if technical support can come in and have some, maybe they have some feedback questions. Okay. So I guess this is it.